Peace and blessings. Welcome back to the channel once again, where we talk all things health and healing from a holistic perspective. And today will be no different. Today, we're going to talk about the top 5 reasons why you cannot lose belly fat. Now, I know I've talked about this topic before in the past, but it seems like people wanted more in-depth information on how do we lose this stubborn belly fat that is so difficult to get rid of. And it'll make sense why in a second why that type of fat is so difficult to get rid of. But it's important to know and understand that the weight loss industry is a billion-dollar industry, multiple billion-dollar industry. And because of that, there's all sorts of over-the-counter and also prescription drugs that are available out there. And so when you start to look at the American population, what we begin to see is that 75% of the population is either overweight or obese. Now, I just want to put that in perspective right now. 75% of the population is either overweight or obese. This means that it is actually more uncommon to have a healthy normal weight than it is to actually be obese in our country. So at this particular time in the human era, America is literally the most obese country that has ever existed on this planet Earth. And so when you start to put that in perspective, it lets you know that something has changed, something has shifted. And much of that has shifted isn't necessarily our genes. Most of us think that, we're passing this down genetically from family member to family member, or from parents to children, or grandparents to parents. That's not the real issue, okay? Now, is there a gene that could particularly be triggered? Yes. But as I tell you guys all the time, genes are like light switches. They could be turned on, they could be turned off. And what turns them on and off is our lifestyle, okay? And particularly, it's unfortunate, but a lot of the things that have changed in the food supply, a lot of the things that have changed in terms of like how we work and how we live throughout the day, a lot of those things are what have really triggered this shift in the fact that 75% of the American population is overweight or obese, okay? And so I think it's really important for me to continually dive into this, because most importantly, what we're starting to see is that our children, childhood obesity is becoming so prevalent today. And pretty soon you're going to see that the vast majority of children, 80 to 90% in the next 10 to 15 years, are going to be overweight or obese if we continue in the trend that we're going, okay? And the most important thing that I'm going to bring up today around belly fat specifically is that this is the most dangerous type of belly fat. And if I had to put one big sort of emphasis and push on the direction we need to start leaning towards in terms of our health, especially in our community, one of the most important things is understanding how we're creating this very dangerous belly fat. Because again, that type of fat that is in the abdomen region, that type of fat is the most dangerous type of fat. That's the type of fat that's causing us to have high blood pressure. That's the type of fat that is causing us to have hormonal imbalances. That's the type of fat that is actually increasing your risk for dying prematurely, okay? It actually increases the risk by twofold. It increases our risk for asthma, and increases our risk for colorectal cancer and even fatty liver disease. So it's really important to know and understand that, first of all fat isn't created equal. This fat in the abdomen area is the most dangerous because it's literally suffocating our organs, okay? But it starts to penetrate our organs, particularly with the liver, and the liver becomes fatty, okay? And when you unfortunately cause damage and dysfunction to the liver, you are causing damage and dysfunction to every area of the body, okay? It is just that important. Let me tell you how important the liver is. The liver is so important that if you lost 2/3 of your liver, 67%, that the liver could, if you change your lifestyle and took a lot of the principles that are in line with our biology and biochemistry, and a lot of the things that I preach here on this channel, you could regenerate 100% of your liver from the remaining 1/3 of your liver. That's how important your liver is. The body knows how important it is that you literally have the ability to regenerate an entirely new liver, okay? So it's hugely important that we know that this type of fat is the fat that we have to focus on. We got to get rid of this type of fat. And what's complicated about that, it is the most difficult type of fat to get rid of, okay? And so when you think about it, again, the weight loss industry is $1 billion industry, hundreds of billions of dollars, okay? They take advantage of it over the counter. They take advantage of it with prescriptions. And some of the prescriptions are everything from Adipex, which could ultimately impact your heart health. Ozempic, which is a new one, which even the unfortunate thing is Ozempic really isn't a weight loss drug. It's really for diabetes, but that's a whole nother conversation, and all of the side effects that come from it. Gastric bypass, another option that a lot of people take. And it is successful in many ways for a lot of people, but then there's all the side effects from it that most people don't know about down the line. And so, you know, what I want to give people is a more holistic approach to addressing this issue, which is so difficult for people to address when it comes to their health, so that they don't have to go through these unnatural methods to lose the weight that is so stubborn to lose, and also don't have to go through all of the side effects, whether it be a surgery, or OTC drug, over-the-counter drug, or a prescription drug, okay? And so it's hugely important we know and understand there is a natural solution. And so the first thing I always tell people is to, get honest with yourself. I'll tell you from my personal journey, at one point in my journey, I ballooned up to 250 pounds, okay? So imagine me, 250 pounds. So an additional, 40 more pounds on me, okay? I had ballooned up to 250 pounds. I was very unhealthy. And as a result of that 250 pounds, I did have a lot of abdominal fat. And that caused me to have high blood pressure, which I've talked about in the past. That caused me to have a lot of inflammation in my body, because that type of fat clings on to a lot of toxicity. It also caused me to have, as I mentioned before, sleep apnea, and a whole host of other issues at a very young age, in my late 20s. And so when I started the journey that I'm on now, and not only reclaiming my health and getting rid of the sleep apnea, the inflammation, and the high blood pressure, but so much more came along with it. So I want you guys to know that I've gone on this journey that you're about to embark on, if this is something that either affects you or somebody you love. Now, one of the things that I had to do was look in the mirror, and it's so important that we take ownership of our health, because again, you can't depend on, the EPA, the FDA, or even your doctor to make sure that you're healthy, okay? You can depend on them to treat you, but you can't depend on them to necessarily heal you, okay? And so taking a look in the mirror, one of the things that I noticed was, and you should do this too, is ask yourself, am I apple shaped or am I pear shaped? And what you'll notice, and the difference between an apple and a pear, is that apple is just round in the middle, okay? And then a pear is sort of slender up top and then sort of goes out, and most of the weight is concentrated in the hips and the thighs. So are you apple or pear shaped? So if you're apple shaped, you're gonna see most of that fat or excess weight concentrated in the torso or the abdomen area, okay? You'll even notice it in the neck and the face as well too. That's what I typically say when somebody's apple shaped. I was apple shaped. I noticed a lot of the weight in my face, a lot of the weight in my chest and neck. As a matter of fact, it didn't even look like I had a neck, okay? And that was one of the things that were very noticeable after I lost a considerable amount of weight, was a very visible neckline afterwards. So all of that puffiness isn't just fat, it's also retained fluid. It's also a lot of toxicity as well too. And so look in the mirror, am I apple shape or pear shape? The pear shape is gonna be more of subcutaneous fat. That's gonna be the fat that's right just below the skin, the type of fat that you can pinch, okay? Now, when you're apple shaped, you're probably going to have both. What you're going to notice is that the belly is going to be really distended and puffy, but it's also going to be things you could either pinch or grab, okay, when it's apple shaped, okay? So look in the mirror. Apple shape is probably the most dangerous because, again, it's that visceral or belly fat or torso fat that is the most dangerous when it comes to increasing high blood pressure, hormonal imbalances, asthma, sleep apnea. It doubles the risk for dying prematurely. It's linked to colorectal cancer and also fatty liver disease as well too, okay? So take a look in the mirror, do an assessment of yourself because I want you to be your first sort of, I want you to get your first opinion, okay? You know how when you go to a doctor and he gives you an opinion about what your health is and then you don't like it, so you go get a second opinion? No, you should be your first opinion, okay? Because even when you go into your physician, they're gonna ask you questions. They're gonna say, well, how do you feel today? And when did the symptoms start? And, you know, on a pain scale of 1 to 10, like, what is your number? Like, they're gonna ask you all these questions about you because you are having the experience in your body, okay? So I want you to be the first set of eyes and ears on your body, which means that you have to bring awareness and consciousness into your body to understand what's going on. Don't just let it be dependent on the person that you go to, who you call your doctor, to be the eyes and ears on your health, okay? So that's the first and most important thing. Now, what I want to get into is the top 5 reasons why it's so difficult to lose belly fat, okay? Number 1, stress, okay? And a lot of people they overlook this one. And they look it in most cases because they believe that they're handling their stress. They believe that stress is something that happened in the moment, but then there's no consequences afterwards. But our bodies are literally geared towards changing its biochemistry whenever we're in a stressful state. Okay, I'll give you for instance, if you're walking in a neighborhood trying to get some steps in so you can burn some calories, and then all of a sudden the neighbor's dog comes from behind the house running out to you, and you go into the stressful state where you start running, what you're going to notice is your heartbeat goes up. You're going to feel that adrenaline pumping through your veins. All of the blood sheds from this abdominal region out to the muscles so you can get that running in. You know, your whole biochemistry changes when you're in an actual dangerous situation. Well, here's the unfortunate thing. Whether you're running from that Rottweiler, or whether it's a stressful situation like you didn't meet the deadline or you're late for work, the body knows no different. It doesn't have eyes outside of the body. It just knows stress is stress. So it's going to continually change your hormones. Whether it's you breaking up with a boyfriend, or you guys going through a tough time, you're going through a tough time with your girlfriend, that's even that emotional stress. And especially being in a continued state of emotional stress, it's going to change the biochemistry of your body. And one of the things that it changes is cortisol in the body. And as cortisol increases, it's going to tell your body that you're in a state of an emergency, which means that you need to pack all your food up, save as much, you know, and what that means is it's going to tell your body to store fat, okay? Because, you know, you storing food is, from a mental perspective, is you storing food in a cabinet, but the body saying to store food is storing food in the form of fat on your body. So it's going to convert things into fat that don't even have to be converted into fat because it believes that you're in a stressful state. So stress is a real contributor to, you know, that belly fat, okay, or your inability to lose that belly fat. So I tell people all the time, you can work out as much as you want, you can eat as healthy as you can, and if you're stressed out, your body will consistently tell itself to store fat, and you will not be able to burn it, okay? So you gotta put sort of stress management protocols and coping mechanisms in place because we live in a stressful world. I mean, the internet is stressful, the media is stressful, you know, unfortunately, how we even communicate is stressful, the music is stressful. So we live in a very stressful world. So there's no world where stress doesn't exist, but there is a world where we can actually properly manage our stress so that we're not changing the biochemistry of our body. So that's one of the number one things you got to do. You got to manage that stress. Number two, eating late. Eating late is probably one of the worst things you can do, is because most of the time when people are eating late, they're going to sleep before that food is digested. Okay. And your digestion is literally working while you're sleeping. Okay, so first of all, it's going to affect the quality of sleep that you're going to have. So that's really important. And as it affects the quality of your sleep, that's the time that we're not only resting, but we're repairing and rejuvenating. And so if you're not able to do that, it's going to put the body in a state of stress. Goes back to number one that I just talked about. Okay. The other thing that's really important is that all of that food, instead of all of that food that is in your gut, most of it is probably going to be triggered into being stored. And it's not going to be stored as muscle. It's going to be stored as fat. Okay, so eating late is a huge one as well too. And I've noticed that people who stop eating, let's say 4 hours before they went to bed, let's say you go to bed at 11 and they stop eating at 7, those people have just simply lost weight by simply not eating, too late, deciding to eat 4 hours before they went to bed. And so that's also going to help with something else I'll talk about, which is called intermittent fasting as well too. So now that you're stopping eating so late, and now you're stopping the eating early, now that window of fasting, which means that you got 4 hours where you didn't eat before you went to sleep, and then you slept for 8 hours, that's 12 hours by itself. And hopefully as soon as you get up, you don't start throwing food in your mouth. So let's say you didn't eat until 10. That's 15 hours of fasting, okay, including this 8 hours of sleep. And so your body has been in this fasted state, which means it's been in a state of repair, rejuvenation, and healing. Okay. And so when you're in that state of repair, rejuvenation, and healing, that's the body's state of peace. That's when the body is going to say, hey, we don't need all this fat. Okay. Because I'm in a state of peace, not in a state of stress. Okay. So number two, stop eating late. Okay. So as you guys can see, I'm telling you the reason why you can't lose belly fat, but I'm showing you the solution in the problem. Okay. Number three, insulin resistance. We eat far too many carbs, and carbs turn into sugar, and excess sugar in the body will be stored as fat. I'm going to repeat that again. Eating far too many refined carbohydrates. Okay. Refined carbohydrates are going to be white flours, white rice, breads, pastas, cookies, cakes, pies. The list goes on and on. We eat too many. And as a matter of fact, we don't need to eat any. And so this is not something that we actually need on our plates. Okay. And so we're eating somewhere around about 130 to 140 pounds of white flour every year. That's just white flour. Okay. And so when you begin to think about it, as I mentioned before, these sort of carbs are sugars, and sugars will eventually be, excess sugars will be converted into fat. Okay. Any excess sugar, that 140 pounds of white flour that you're consuming, that 140 pounds of white flour is going to be broken down into sugar, and that sugar is going to be converted into fat. So it makes sense why we can't lose the weight. Okay. So hugely important. And it's not just the cookies, pastries, the pies, the pasta, the pizza, the bread. It's not just that either. It's also the sugary beverages that you're consuming too. Those are empty calories because there's nothing but sugars, which means that there's no fiber attached to it. There's no minerals attached to it. There's no nutrients of any kind. It's just water with sugar. Okay. That could be soda. That could be quote unquote juice as well too. Because a lot of the juice that you're consuming isn't actually juice. That's why when you turn it on the back, it says 4 or 3% juice. So it's not really juice. What it is water with sugar. Okay. And when you're consuming those empty calories, sugar gets converted into fat, excess sugar. Okay. So that's a huge reason why we're having so many issues as well too. All right. So insulin resistance, because insulin, The more sugar you have in your blood, the more insulin you're going to have. Insulin tells the body to store fat. Okay, the same way stress tells the body to store fat, insulin tells the body to store fat. Okay, so we got to sort of shift away from the unhealthy carbs. The healthy carbs are green leafy vegetables and fruits. Those are the healthy carbs, because even fruits, they're attached to fiber, they're attached to minerals, antioxidants, phytonutrients. Okay, so you won't have the same issue that you're going to have with all these refined carbohydrates. Okay, so insulin resistance, number 3. Number 4, alcohol. Alcohol. And I know that you used to hear all of these studies that used to say a glass of wine a day keeps the doctor away. That is actually not true. Okay, that is actually not true with the new studies that are coming out. And so what we're finding is that it doesn't matter what type of alcohol it is. I mean, it could be fine wine or it could be, tequila. What's important is that the body will recognize alcohol as a poison. And anything that is a poison has to go to the liver. And what happens when it goes to the liver, at some point, is going to damage the liver cells, what you call hepatocytes. And as these cells become more and more damaged, they become dysfunctional. And at some point, a lot of what is in the alcohol will be converted into sugar. Okay? Now, and as I told you, all excess sugar will be converted into fat. So eventually, you will get a condition known as fatty liver disease. Okay? In combination, now think about this, alcohol in combination with a lot of these refined carbohydrates that I just mentioned, it creates fatty liver disease, even more so the refined carbohydrates. And once your liver can't function, not only will your liver get fatty, which leads to a whole host of other issues. Check that video out because I did a video on fatty liver. But it's also going to lead to you developing more fat in the abdomen region as well, too, because your body won't be able to properly process not only the alcohol, but any other type of things in the body, because the liver not only processes like chemicals and alcohol, but it also helps to process a lot of our food. The liver also helps to convert excess sugar into glycogen, which is a stored form of glucose in the body to be used later during exercise or whenever you need it. Okay, and so if your liver isn't properly functioning, instead of converting it into glycogen to be used for the muscles or movement, now it's converting it into fat. Okay, so it's hugely important. We know and understand that, yes, there's a lot of myths out there about alcohol being positive for you, but trust me, the damage or what's harmful about alcohol far outweigh whatever potential benefits you've ever heard, because again, it damages the liver, it increases estrogen in the body and decreases testosterone, which we know helps to build muscle, and muscle helps to burn fat, and it also blocks the ability of the body to actually burn fat. Okay, so alcohol. Number 5 is toxicity, and I mentioned this in another video, so check that out. But our bodies primarily store toxicity in the fat. Okay, so when you're eating processed foods that have, dyes, thickening agents, emulsifiers, preservatives, pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, the body has to figure out where to put all these chemicals. Because, unfortunately, if you live in a developed nation, you're going to get exposed to some form of chemicals. All right, whether you're eating it through your diet or through the air or through household products or through the municipal or tap water. Okay, and the body will, when there's too much and your detoxification systems aren't properly functioning the way they do, the liver, the kidneys, the lungs, the lymphatic system, the bowels, etc. When they're not properly, eliminating waste from the body, then the body will say, well, if I can't get it out of the body, then in its ingenuity, it'll say, I'll store it inside of fat. That way I keep it out of the bloodstream, I keep it out of the tissues, I keep it out of the organs. Okay, so once your body becomes so laden with fat, and then all of that toxicity is now going into the fat, okay, what you're noticing is that it'll become very difficult to lose any kind of weight. So you'll see people who go to the gym and they do it very consistently, But the unfortunate thing is they will be really fit, but they won't be able to lose the fat. And it's because the body has said that, look, your detoxification pathways or elimination pathways are shut down. If I burn this fat, I won't be able to eliminate the toxicity that is in the fat. So it will be resistant to you burning the fat, especially this belly fat, okay? So it's hugely important. This is why detoxing is so important. A lot of you have done my full body detox, my 14-day or my 28-day detox. So that's why you see that plays a huge role. And this is why when you do my detox, you feel that belly start to get really flatter over that 14 to 28 days versus if you go to the gym and just work out and don't really focus on your nutrition, you never achieve that goal. Okay, it becomes very difficult. It's like running uphill. Okay, so that's why detoxification is a huge part of that, because even though we have elimination organs and detoxification organs, once they become so saturated, they're not able to process the toxins and eliminate the toxins. So to get them back online, you use herbs. So that's what my full body detox is about. So those are the 5 ways, the 5 reasons why it's so difficult to lose belly fat.